The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, sir. I join with members in expressing my deep regret and profound sadness at the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and commend the three speakers that we have just had for their outstanding contributions. After the death of the Queen's father, King George VI, Winston Churchill said, "There struck a deep and solemn note in our lives, which, as it resounded far and wide, stilled clatter and traffic of 20th century life in many lands and made countless millions of human beings pause to look around them." These words resonate with us today as we come to terms with our loss. Over the last months, we have watched the Queen approaching journey's end. Even in her last days, she welcomed her 15th British Prime Minister, devoted to duty until the very end. We should take heart and draw comfort and strength for the future from her bearing and fortitude. As our new King, Charles III, has said, when the Queen pledged to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples, that was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. Her example is truly a pattern to all princes living and to us all. The Queen shared a great love for Australia, and Australians shared a great love for the Queen. Nowhere more so, sir, than here in South Australia. On the 23rd of March 1954, Her Majesty opened a special session of the Parliament of South Australia with the inspiring words, "I am confident that by courage, enterprise and determination, you will move forward to an era of ever-increasing prosperity." We're privileged to live in South Australia. While we always strive to be better and to progress, and in our role as MPs to serve our communities more effectively and more faithfully, there is no question that in all of the experience of human life, we are fortunate to be South Australians born in this age. I believe we owe much of our success and prosperity to Her Majesty's stability and steadfastness. In terms of constitutional monarchs, she was a paragon. Over 70 years, the world changed, and the countries over which she reigned changed dramatically too, as did their peoples, as did their laws, as did, in a number of occasions, their constitutional arrangements. Their head of state, Queen Elizabeth II, will be remembered as a monarch, a constitutional monarch, under whose reigns these momentous changes were not only allowed, but by her signature enabled, presided over with her blessing. And in doing so, she has demonstrated to us her strength and the potential of the role to which she dedicated her life in service. The institution she embodied is surrounded by an otherworldly aura, a sense of a different time. And for some, this poses a challenge, and when I was younger, it certainly did for me too. But it also provides what the Premier described earlier in this debate as a quiet constitutional certainty in the political rough and tumble of our daily lives. As the member for West Torrens described in the speech just given, a symbol of Western democratic values. You see, by removing the head of state from the to and fro of politics, of representation, of overt power, the dangers posed by demagoguery and constitutional instability have been avoided. As Jordan Peterson wrote just last night, the monarchical system therefore fulfills a vital psychological, spiritual and social purpose and is of great practical utility as well. And to our new monarch, King Charles III, to whom our motion is addressed, we know your life too has been given in service, and that in the example of your mother, the Queen, you take seriously the model she set in fulfilling this important constitutional role. The admiration and respect in which Her Majesty was held can be assigned to many factors. Her lifetime of public service, her dedication to duty, her selfless devotion, her ability to rise above the political fray, her compassion and empathy for others, her unifying presence and grace, and her humanity. Having spoken up to now about the nature of her role and the benefits of its unusual arrangements, it was her humanity, the love that she demonstrated daily, that enabled so many to feel an extraordinary personal connection. We've seen the sorrow and grief most acutely demonstrated by members of Her Majesty's family, but it is a sorrow shared in no small measure by billions of people around the world who we've been reminded watched her final farewell last night together. Many here in South Australia have taken the opportunity to come into Government House or into our electorate offices to share their own reflections and condolences in the books the government has given us all. And I can advise the House that Morialta residents in their hundreds have done so too. A couple even met Her Majesty personally. I was pleased to read a note from my constituent Derek, who was a Coldstream Guardsman. He wrote goodbye, happy memories of exciting times and occasions. A number of others felt a personal connection forged during her 16 visits to Australia and 7 to South Australia during the time of her reign. My constituent Pat wrote, "Your Majesty, I saw you when you visited Mount Gambier in 1954. What a thrill for me and the students present. I've loved and respected you and your family. Thank you for being there. Rest in peace." Many more constituents who never met Her Majesty still felt that connection, and I can advise the House the people coming to my office represent many generations, the diverse backgrounds representing the multicultural tapestry so prominent in my seat of Morialta. My constituent Yingzhan wrote, "Although I grew up in a communist country, Your Majesty's the Queen's passing is a very sad moment for me and makes me extremely depressed. We have only known you as our monarch, such a wonderful woman who dedicated yourself to the duty of the country and its people. Rest in peace, knowing that you have lots of respect and deep love." A number of themes have been prominent in the condolence book, and the Leader of the Opposition won't be surprised to hear that they reflect those which he warned may bear repetition in the debate today. Therese spoke for many and when she wrote, "You have been an inspiration in my life for your steadfastness, loyalty, faith, dedication and love." Many of those words were repeated in so many other messages. I'm sure they'll be heard more often this afternoon. Her Majesty lived for 96 full years. The world has known her in many roles: sovereign, diplomat, figurehead, queen, but also, sir, as a daughter, a sister, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. That we have known her all our lives in all of these roles no doubt informs the deep sense of sadness that so many people have felt about a public figure that most have never met. She was a constant when all else around was change. That connection informs why I believe so many of us felt surprise in our hearts when we started hearing the sad news 10 days ago, even though our heads should have prepared us for the inevitable. Her legacy is within all of us, and I find myself no less touched by this than anyone else. 14 years ago, I found myself giving the eulogy at my own grandma's funeral. In that eulogy, I reflected that when I was little, I thought my grandma was the Queen. My child's mind couldn't distinguish the idea that there were two lovely elderly ladies in England who cared about us, who had beautiful clothes, immaculate hair, and who we saw pictures of whenever they went abroad. Of course, she wasn't our nan, our grandma, our grandmother, our nanny. She was the Queen. She had a life that was something else altogether. She was born into royalty. She lived in castles and palaces, known to the world. And while her life was an exemplar of service, there's no question that for many people, the royal family first represents privilege. The fact of these circumstances reminds me of one final quality in Her Majesty that we know was so important to her, we were reminded of by the Leader of the Opposition earlier, that of her devout faith. Her Majesty would have personally been deeply familiar with the gospel call that from those to whom much is given, much is expected. Despite any privilege that can be ascribed to Her Majesty in life, I believe that none can argue that she has not exceeded even the highest of expectations that could have been set for her and her service. Mr. Speaker, we send our deepest condolences to the royal family. We share in their grief and loss. God save the King.